Welcome to Flavour Text, a podcast where we explore the intersection between lore, story, and gameplay in Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm CrabbyTerror8, and I'm joined as usual by my brisk and jaunty co-host, Kevling. How are you, sir?
Brisk. I am brisk and jaunty, apparently, yes. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. You okay?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, yeah. Yes, fantastic.
I was just saying before we started recording, it's actually starting to feel a little summery here for the first time in a while. So we've got clear blue skies, sun's out.
Lovely.
Even though we're supposed to be having the wettest summer in 20 years, apparently, but we'll see. Never trust the weather forecasters.
Is that why you've got a Pimm's in your hand? I wondered.
Yes. And how's things with
good. We just had a month's worth of rain in one day yesterday, so it has done nothing but rain for the last 6 months in Sydney. It's been just rain. It's like more tropical than anything. It's crazy. It's not supposed to be like that, but it is. So,
wow. Yeah, my brother was over from the States last month, and it's a running joke. I don't remember whether we mentioned this on the last podcast or if it happened since then. The running joke is every time his wife visits the UK, the weather is glorious. She's never seen it rain in the UK, of all places. And they came over and the weather was glorious for that 10 days they were here. As soon as they went, clouded over, started being miserable again. And then it's been miserable since then till today. And now sun's out again. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
And what have you been up to games-wise, Kevling?
What have I been up to games-wise? Oh, I finally finished off that scenario of ISS Vanguard that has been sat on my desk over there since February. So I actually finish off and successfully finish it off, unlike my usual Arkham games. Other games-wise, I'm trying to think what I have been doing, actually. I've not done much at all board game-wise. I think the last Kickstarter I had delivered was Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs. Again, I'm not sure if that has been since the last recording or not, but which is a tiny solo version of Gloomhaven.
Sounds nice.
All in a box that's like about that big. He says, gesturing for an audio podcast.
And is it the full RPG, just in a smaller version, or?
Yeah, basically, there's something like 16 or 20 missions to work through, and each map is just on a single card, and you have these little tiny cubes and miniatures that must only be about a centimetre tall.
That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's really good. What else? I got this last week as well. I'm more transfixed by the art style than anything else.
Wow.
Have you heard of Betrayal at House on the Hill?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sort of like a card game sibling to it. It's called Betrayal Deck of Lost Souls. And again, it's just absolutely beautiful artwork. It's made up almost like a tarot deck.
Beautiful.
And one of you is potentially a traitor. So you're all trying to solve all of these curses, but one of you could be trying not to, with the idea being that you've got everything you need to solve the final curse at the end, and then one of you will say, "I was a traitor all along," sort of thing. Yes. Yeah, we had a couple of games at our local game store, and it went quite well. Yeah, everyone seemed to quite enjoy it.
Fantastic.
So yes, I think that's pretty much it. Physical game-wise, digitally, I'm still ploughing through Marvel's Midnight Suns on the Steam Deck. I think I'm at something like 70 hours now, and I'm at the point now where this is the final mission. Are you sure you want to go ahead? Yeah. And so, and I'm at the point where I've ranked up almost all of my heroes except for a few. So I might as well just finish off. Let's get them ranked up as well, because I think from what I've seen online, the final mission includes absolutely every single member of your party you brought along the way, rather than normally the previous ones you just go in 3 at a time. So let's get everyone ranked up first.
I kind of wish Baldur's, no spoilers here, but Baldur's Gate 3 had ended that way. Actually, I was a little bit disappointed that they, everybody you'd, collected along the way didn't all kind of have a role to play at the end. It was, but I can imagine that would have been a bit of a nightmare to program. But anyway, yeah. Yes.
And what about yourself? What have you been up to?
Let's see. Just working through Hemlock Vale. So the longest night, I think it's called, took a couple of sessions to play through. It's a very long scenario. I think it took 7 hours for us to get through it in total. It lived up to his name, absolutely.
Night, yeah.
And I have to say, I'm not terribly interesting in that sense. I mean, it's just kind of, without spoiling it, but you just basically just kind of, the hordes are kind of rushing at you and you're just kind of holding them back kind of idea. So it was interesting at first, but by the 4th hour or 5th hour, it's kind of a bit ho-hum. So, but it's okay. But yes, just a bit too long. And I hear that the ending is pretty long as well. So, but I haven't done that bit yet. So we're back to kind of Scarlet Keys kinds of.
Is that like your penultimate scenario? Was it then?
I think so. Yeah. We're up to the final evening or something now, or something.
But you're still alive. You've made it to the final scenario.
Yes, still made
wow.
it. Okay,
that's good for you.
Yeah. So I've done pretty well. I'm not the main driver in the crew. I'm a rogue, so I have a fairly small role overall compared to the Seeker in particular. Their deck is particularly good, so they get a lot done in their turn. So yes, I've been doing that.
I think we did our latest Hemlock Grove a couple of weeks ago, and I can't actually remember which one we did. I think it was another one where you were sort of lost in the woods, I think. Is there 2 scenarios like that? Yeah. Can't remember now. I can't remember what we were trying to do. It was something to do with mushrooms and bears.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, if I remember right. Unless I'm getting mixed up with the scenario before.
There's a mushrooms and bears one, and then there's sort of like a crystal-y one, and there's which they kind of can seem a little similar.
Yeah, it was definitely another one where you'd got a deck of cards that were the locations and you putting them up as you explore sort of thing. It was the one where there was where there was a day and a dark and light mechanic on every location.
Yes.
And certain things would only trigger if it was dark and one of you had a lantern.
Yes, I know the one.
And this is really bad, isn't it, on an Arkham podcast? I can't remember the name of the scenario, where we were going, what we were doing. And I think we succeeded. I can't remember. Most memorable scenario, obviously.
But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it more than Scarlet Keys for sure. So that's good. And apart from that, just God of War Ragnarok. I'm working my way through that, and I'm quite enjoying that. So where am I up to? I've done it's a bit different because it's much more like you're the kid, and then you're Kratos, and then Kratos goes off with what's her name? She hates him and she wants to kill him, and then she doesn't want to kill him, and that. So through the sort of
Freya, isn't it?
through the sort of lush forest. That's the bit I'm up to. So I don't know how far in I am. I'm assuming at least 40% of the way through, but that's where I'm up to. So.
Oh, like a mug, I did end up backing the God of War board game as well. So I do have 1,000,001 miniatures on the way to me in a year or so's time.
Nice. Excellent. That sounds good. Yes. So, where did we get up to in Circle Undone, Kevling?
So we did scenario 1, the witching hour, last time, didn't we?
Bunch of witches.
After the prologue that was in the in Joseph Miger's house, and today we're going back to Joseph Miger's house
again.
Hopefully to see what it looks like in a non-haunted way.
At least for a short while.
Yes. So it might be a little bit of deja vu on some of this compared to the first episode of this series, but
yes,
that's how the game goes, isn't it?
That's exactly how it goes. Yeah. So I think. From memory, one of the things we were sort of talking about at the end of the The witching hour was you're sort of left with, you don't know why you've done what you've kind of done with the witching hour. You don't know what's going on there. You just sort of met these witches and you might have defeated them or you might not have, but you're not really sure what's the reason for that. And on top of that, the scenario doesn't really give you any forward momentum either. You don't know, once you've completed the witching hour, it's not like you know where you're going to go next or what you're going to do next, because it doesn't provide any hint or any idea about what might be coming next.
No. No, it was just a complete random occurrence, wasn't it? We went to see because obviously the prologue is completely different characters. Yes. It's almost like a previously on horror. And then we just went to see the fortune teller, and then all of a sudden we were in the woods. And like you say, we didn't know why, we didn't know where, we didn't know what we were doing. No. We sort of stumbled across the witches, fumbled our way through that. And then we're back at Arkham. I think it finishes, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, wandering towards Uptown.
That's right. Exactly. We kind of wake up again just in Arkham, and that's where it kind of ends. So it's not like we now need to go here or something like that. So if you finish that scenario, you're sort of left wondering what's going to happen next. But and I guess that's where the beginning of this one, thankfully, provides some kind of then forward idea about what's going to happen next. In the form of a newspaper article.
Shall I make a start?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Scenario 2 at Death's Doorstep. 4 missing, whereabouts unknown. Residents of French Hill are still in a tizzy after the sudden disappearance of several guests and house staff from the home of Mr. Joseph Miger during the night of the annual Silver Twilight charity gala last Sunday. We are absolutely baffled as to how this could have happened, said Mr. Miger the day after the disappearances. That said, we are confident that Sheriff Engel and the Arkham Police will do their due diligence in finding the missing persons. There is still no evidence whatsoever as to the whereabouts of Miss Gabriella Mitzra, Mr. Jerome Davids, Mr. Valentino Rivas, and Mrs. Penny White, all of whom vanished halfway through the event and have not been seen since. Well, it's not entirely true, is it? Because at the end of the scenario, we had to log evidence left behind.
Yeah, that's right.
Mind you, I guess it's what he's choosing to say to the papers, though, I guess. Yeah. The police are offering a substantial reward for any person or persons who come forward with information related to these disappearances. When asked whether the police were considering the case a homicide, Sheriff Engel had this to say: "There's no reason to suspect foul play is involved just yet. However, given the circumstances, we have to consider every possibility." No other attendees have come forward with statements concerning the gala, which seemed to finish without a hitch, despite the disappearances. So far, none of the prominent members of the Silver Twilight Lodge have expressed any concern about the lodge's upcoming benefit dinner, which was recently moved to the same location, Joseph Miger's estate in French Hill. "I'm certain this event will be a smashing success," Mr. Miger told the Arkham Advertiser in an interview yesterday. "There is no reason for the fair residents of Arkham to worry." Minnie Klein.
Yeah, so that's the article, and then from there it says you fold up the newspaper and shove it aside on your desk, examining other files you've collected over the last few days concerning the missing persons. It's been several days since your experience in the woods. You've tried to put it all out of your mind, but it's impossible. Every night you dream of a nameless place in the void of space, a faint discordant melody of hypnotizing flutes pulling you forward. Now there are others disappearing from town without a trace. The disappearances dance along the edges of your thoughts. No reason to worry, you ponder, turning the man's words over in your head. You think of the card reader and her warning, and you wonder if you are simply imagining devils where there are none. Regardless, there is only one way to know for sure. You pick up an invitation, examining the silver embossed stationery and perfect calligraphy. The Silver Twilight Lodge requests the pleasure of your company on the evening of November the 29th at 8 o'clock at the estate of Joseph Eckhard Miger, Esquire, for the benefit of the Fairchild Foundation. As you prepare for the night ahead, you cannot help but wonder, are you taking action to remedy your fate, as the soothsayer advised, or are you walking willingly into the jaws of a grim destiny? Dun, 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 dun. Yes, so there we go. So one thing that struck me when I sort of looked at this again is that it almost, a bit like, remember with the Forgotten Age, when you got to Threads of Fate, it's almost like the past two scenarios were kind of like the past, and you were sort of starting the campaign. This feels a bit the same way. Yeah. This feels like a classic start to an RPG campaign, you know, a newspaper article and an invitation to somewhere. And it's almost like you could start the whole campaign here. The last two scenarios are of no consequence whatsoever to anything. You literally could start it here. You know what I mean? There's like, it doesn't matter if you didn't play the first two scenarios from a story perspective. You could literally start here.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think if narratively there was anything. Well, we had to log some discovered mementos, didn't we, on the previous scenario? So I think that has some impact later on. But narratively, at this stage, yeah, you're right. It makes no difference. I mean, the previous scenario could be a flashback that we do next.
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
Like that, couldn't it?
Exactly. It's almost like a standalone. In fact, both of them feel that way, that they're completely standing alone. It's kind of, I like it. In the Forgotten Age, it was more clever because it was like you'd played as the past diary, you know what I mean? And then you were in the present, which was a very clever thing. But this just feels so disconnected.
And there was a direct link there,
link.
Wasn't there? Because you had the diary in the modern day, so you were reading what had happened to the previous expedition, and you could refer back to their notes, and actually you then play through that experience.
Exactly.
Whereas here, we were four random people connected to the location in the prologue, who could only disappear or some along those lines anyway. And then, like we said, we randomly went to see a soothsayer, randomly found ourselves in the woods, and then now we're going to this party.
Yeah, exactly. and
a little disjointed.
And I mean, I suppose it's, you know, it gives us somewhere to go, and it's a little bit like Carcosa. We go to a party, I suppose. So there's a, you know, but yeah, it did strike me that you could literally start the campaign here, and from at least a story perspective, it doesn't actually matter because what's come before is completely disconnected in that way. So yeah, it's kind of curious.
So then we move on to the setup, which is relatively straightforward.
Yes.
You know, gather these encounter sets, set these ones aside. We set. The main difference on this one is that there's two different versions of every location. There's like the normal and the spectral versions. So we set all the spectral versions aside, which are the ones that we've seen in the prologue anyway. We set Joseph Maiger aside. But then the most complicated bit is dealing with the missing persons. And the way they've worded it, I think we had this problem when we were playing it the other week, that it seems to be backwards the way that they've tried to explain it all. So you check the missing persons section of the log, and for each of the four people in the prologue who isn't crossed off, so they're basically the ones that you played, you put 6 clues on their specific locations. Then you remove clues based on the number of evidence that was left behind. So you're removing the evidence that was left behind to then leave clues for you to find.
Yeah,
I'm sure there could have been a more intuitive way of explaining that.
Absolutely.
Or describing
it's bonkers. It makes it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I can kind of from a kind of a setup kind of mechanical perspective, I get it. But you're right, it makes no sense that you would be taking away the clues that were left behind, unless it's the clues. But the thing is, I thought, oh, maybe the clues get left behind, they've been found and removed. But actually,
this is the rest of what's to find or something.
But actually, that's not the case, because when you read later, based on which areas you kind of get all the clues from, it makes it really clear that you found the evidence that was, you know what I mean, that's been left behind. So it contradicts itself in a really clumsy and unnecessary way. It's almost like, I don't know what was going on, but it's just really, like you say, it's counterintuitive and really strange. You know, if you think too hard about, don't even have to think too hard, but if you just think about it, it's kind of a bit strange. Yeah.
And then the only other thing is we just touched on it about the locations having 2 different versions. It just emphasizes that when you swap the locations, all the tokens and enemies and everything that were at the location are still there. Attached cards have stayed attached, so nothing is moved when you do the swap. It's literally just the location itself has changed.
Yeah. The other thing is what did you assume? I mean, without looking, before you start, just with that setup, what would you assume you would be doing when you go to the party, Kevling? What was your kind of assumption as a player?
I don't know if I gave it that much thought. I'm trying to remember. We've literally just read the introduction, haven't we? And I've already forgotten why we're even going.
But we're putting the clues and evidence, so you kind of think, well, I'll probably be trying to gather evidence, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out. We've read this newspaper story. These 4 people have disappeared. We've sort of wangled. I guess we sort of wangled our way to an invite, or we got invited, didn't we? Yes, we were given that fancy invitation with the calligraphy for some reason. We don't know why. So, well, while we're there, let's nosy around and see if we can find out what happened to these missing people.
Exactly. That's what you're doing. But in the background setup, it doesn't say we better nosy around and find out what's been going on.
No.
You know what I mean? It's more like The Last King, in that we'll go to this party and kind of just see what happens. You know what I mean? There's no explicit we better gather clues and work out what's happened here. You know what I mean? There's this weird disconnect between what the story says we're going for and what the game wants us to do when we get there. You know what I mean? It's again, there's this disconnect.
Part of it feeds into the fortune teller and everything, and we've had this weird encounter with the witches as well, because it sort of puts us at the end of the setup there, doesn't it? It says, are you actually taking action to remedy your fate, or are you just walking into destiny? So I guess it's kind of leaving it open as to what is actually going on and what's our part in it, in that we actually don't know. But you're right, you are sort of starting this scenario without really knowing what you're up to and why, other than what you've read in the newspaper and the strange happenings in the woods.
So again, it kind of robs the player. Well, it robs the characters, but it robs the player of sort of agency in a really unsatisfying way. Because actually getting clues and investigating is incredibly important in this scenario, as we will see. I think the agenda and the act, or at least the act anyway, gives a bit more clarity, I think, on what we're doing, to be fair.
Yes, that's true. So the agenda is Justice 11, be true to yourself and seek the truth in others. You must balance the scales. You shall be called to account for your actions. So Silver Twilight enemies cannot be damaged or defeated, and forced when you draw a monster enemy, instead of spawning it, set it aside out of play and put a doom on the agenda. This can cause the agenda to advance.
And the act has hidden agendas, which is sort of a interesting play on words, because the way the act and the agenda sort of work in this scenario is a little bit unusual. It says hidden agendas. As you approach the patio of the Migra estate, a man in an elegant suit checks your invitation at the door. Inside, guests mingle and chat with one another, but much of the conversation is awkward and terse. A silent tension has gripped the manor, and you're not sure why. Objective: find information about the disappearances by discovering as many clues as you can. And then in brackets it says, do not advance until you're instructed. Hint, it may be worthwhile to investigate the last known locations of the missing persons. So this gives you some now, which you didn't have in the background. It gives you some impetus, which is you're kind of here as amateur sleuths to kind of work out what's happened and get as much information about it as you can. And you've kind of got 8 turns to do that with the agenda, right?
Yes.
And nothing's unusual here, because the layout is very well known to us, because we've already done this.
Yes.
Difference being, of course, that these are the normal locations rather than the spectral ones that we experienced in the Prelude.
And then also looking at the scenario card on the Chaos bag, we have no cultists in our bag yet. So it's literally just skulls, tablets, and elder things. The skull is -1 or -3 if your location is haunted. The tablet is -2, but if you fail and it's an attack or an evasion, then the haunts will trigger. And the elder thing is -2, but if there is a spectral enemy there at your location, take a damage. So there's a common theme there on each of those negative chaos tokens about the ghosts or the haunted state of the building that we're in. Things will trigger.
Shall we go ahead and go through the locations? I don't think we'll go through the spectral locations because I think we went through them in the back in the Prelude, didn't we?
Yes, please refer back to two episodes ago if you want to see what we thought of the spectral locations. So we start off. Do we start off in the entry hall?
So.
I can't remember. So the entry hall, 3 clues. Three shroud, no clues. And as an action, straight away we can resign. Oh, I guess there's nothing to these disappearances after all. That joke never wears thin, having resign on the starting card of the of the game. Most of the manor is off limits to guests who are not members of the Silver Twilight Lodge, but your investigation takes priority, so you wait for the right time to sneak away. So again, our investigation takes priority, but narratively we haven't really been told that, have we?
No.
Other than that sort of bit on the act.
Yeah. It is a weird disconnect from that perspective.
And sorry, I didn't read the unrevealed side, but we wouldn't see the unrevealed side, would we? Because we're starting here. Clearly, whatever business Joseph Meiger has his hands in, it's doing well. A soft red carpet guides you deeper into the opulent hall, flanked by small statues of marble and ivory. Above, a glimmering chandelier casts a brilliant shine along the polished floor and wooden stairs.
Then there's the Victorian halls, which is off the entry hall. And that says, even the hallways of this manor are luxurious, decorated with thick rugs, bizarre artwork, and uncanny statues shaped from scrap metal. Rays of sunlight shine through the curtains as the sun sets over Arkham outside. And the revealed side is 4 shrouds, 0 clues. You go looking for trouble. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a Silver Twilight enemy is discarded. Spawn that enemy in the Victorian halls, then gain 2 clues from the token pool. Group limit once per game. So you can get a couple of clues there if you want.
Okay. I shall head off to the left and look at the trophy room. The unrevealed side, flanking this door, are 2 deer heads mounted along the wall, set almost as though they are guarding its entrance. So on the revealed side, 2 shroud, no clues, and as an action, you can spend some time schmoozing with the other guests. Either gain 2 resources, or spend 2 resources to gain a clue from the token pool, limit once per round. Mounted animal heads adorn this room's panelled walls, along with other artefacts from Joseph's collection. Dominating the room are several overstuffed armchairs arranged around a low table bearing a crystal decanter of brandy. So we get in these actions, aren't we, to make up for the fact that there are no clues in these locations, but we are looking for other types of evidence or information.
Yes, exactly. So it's becoming clear that we're not just here for the party. We are absolutely trying to work out what's been going on. There's the billiards room as well. From outside the room, you can hear the telltale clacking of billiard balls clattering against one another along with idle chatter and laughter. This is a 3 shroud, 0 clue location as well. It has an action test 3 foot to compete with the other guests. If you succeed, gain a clue from the token pool, limit once per round. So that's another way of getting clues. A ritzy, polished billiard table lies at the center of this room, surrounded by cigarette smoke and illuminated by 2 ornate lamps. Several guests relax around the table, casually playing or chatting with one another. It's all very civilized.
So that was the billiards room. Then at the top we have the office. Atop a steep staircase leading to the manor's third floor, far from the hustle and bustle of the party below, a solitary oak door stands sentry, guarding Mr. Miger's closest secrets. So this is 4 shroud and 1 clue per investigator. We actually have some clues here. Each Silver Twilight enemy in the office loses aloof. So, yeah, he shouldn't be snooping around in here. And then forced, if you reveal a skull, cultist, tablet, elder thing, or tentacle symbol while investigating the office, place a doom on the nearest Silver Twilight enemy. I must have forgotten, did the cultist icon tablets get added as part of the outcome of the witch in that previous scenario? I think they must have done. But no, I just can't understand there how we could reveal a cultist token when the scenario card doesn't shows that there isn't a cultist token.
Yeah.
There's no effect. Maybe that's just a slight oversight.
Yeah, because I'm thinking back to the witching hour.
I'm just looking back. Yeah, there's no mention of cultist tokens in the resolution.
No.
I think that's just a slight error.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of covering all the bases kind of thing.
Maybe they're expecting some random future scenario could add extra.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, Joseph's office is as much a display of wealth and power as it is a workplace. I mean, when you look at the size of that desk in that picture, that is definitely someone who's making a grand display, isn't it?
Art Deco style desk, very nice. Then we have the master bedroom. This unmarked door is large and well polished, set in a corner of the upstairs hallway, out of view of guests and other prying eyes. 3 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. Forced when the round ends, if there is at least 1 investigator in the master bedroom, place 1 doom on the nearest Silver Twilight enemy. So you don't want to be hanging around here, really. No doubt about it, this must be Joseph Miger's bedroom. Waka waka wah wah. The centerpiece of the room is a massive canopy bed, the posts of which are ornately carved. You see no sign of a Mrs. Miger. Okay. Okay, fair enough. That's interesting aside there. Anyway.
Yes. And then last of all, we have the balcony on the far right. An open glass door leads onto the balcony outside the estate's master bedroom. 1 shroud, no clues, and as an action you can discard cards from your hand with a total of at least 3 book icons. Parley, the guest here, knows more about the Silver Twilight Lodge than they let on. Gain 2 clues from the token pool, group limit once per game. Which is a bit odd because this balcony is off the bedroom and we're not supposed to be in the bedroom. So how there can be guests on the balcony, I'm not quite sure.
It's Joseph Miger's special guest, perhaps.
Yeah. Yes, maybe that's the non-Mrs. Miger that we're talking to there. And yes, they do know more than they're letting on.
So yes, and it's quite a contrast when you do the prelude. You see all the sort of spectral ones, and everything's all decayed and nasty. And this one, everything's nice and opulent, and so
yeah, it's interesting looking at them side by side, isn't it? To see almost like the before.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So you run around getting clues, discover as many as you can.
Sorry, yes, I will say, we did say, oh, this location has no clues, this location has no clues. Those locations will have had clues put on them in the setup based on the evidence left behind or not left behind. That's true, yes. Yes, forgot that bit, yes. So there are more clues out there than it initially seems looking at cards.
Exactly, that's a really good point, yeah. So it's really just a case of hoovering up as many clues as you can before the 8 agenda clicks around. Yeah. And a lot of the Silver Twilight, unless says otherwise, when they do come out, they're aloof, so they're not like they're chasing you down. Monsters aren't appearing, they get set aside. So it's not like you're being beset by enemies in a significant way.
No, and the objective is still relatively vague, isn't it? Other than, like it says, find as many clues as you can, you'll be told when to advance.
Yes.
So we're not sure at this stage what is going to trigger act advancing.
Yeah, exactly. So, so clearly this is more than just hanging around at the party and talk. It's not about talking to people, but there's a bit of that schmoozing, but it's really more about doing. It's really about sort of surreptitiously doing, own investigations. And then I guess, the agenda will then, this is why it's a bit different to a normal scenario. The agenda will eventually flip, which weirdly kind of feels more like the act in some of the ways that it then operates.
Yeah, shall I take that? Yeah, pulled into the shadows. You have uncovered some of the evidence pertaining to the disappearances, but the truth has yet to be unveiled. If the investigators do not possess 3 clues per investigator as a group, they lose all of their clues. If the investigators possess at least 3 clues per investigator as a group, they must spend that many and spawn the set-aside Joseph Miger enemy at the location other than the entry hall that is farthest from all investigators. And then we open the campaign guide and we proceed to Interlude 1, a record of those lost. Then once that interlude has been resolved, we remove all of the clues and we advance the act.
Yes.
So it was literally just a case of lasting out the 8 rounds.
Yeah.
Making sure you had at least 3 clues each by that point, which you wouldn't know that other than the hint on the act. Find as much as you can by discover as many clues as you can, but no hint as to how many you would actually need. I suppose thinking about it, actually, if you don't get the 3 clues per investigator, then Joseph Miger doesn't spawn. So maybe that's a good.
I mean that that happened to us. We didn't manage to get, because Doom. I think we were drawing from the encounter deck. We ended up with a lot of Doom because we drew a lot of monsters and things, and we never got the 3. We didn't quite get the 3 hack clues.
I think we were one off, weren't we, if I remember right?
And it's kind of, as we'll see, it's sort of unfortunate if you don't get the 3 hack clues. It's not the end of the world, but it is kind of unfortunate if you don't. So, because it kind of cuts you off from certain things if that's the case. So.
And I guess narratively as well, you've been poking around, you've been finding out about this disappearances, and you found enough to get his attention.
Yeah.
And so he appears.
Exactly.
Yeah, what's going on here, sort of
exactly.
thing, yes.
And as long as you've cleared the clues from the specific locations of the missing people, and this is why we're saying it's counterintuitive, because it's the clues that are left, not the ones that were left behind, weirdly, then you get extra information about, or you discover extra information about what's going on with these missing people.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the interlude, isn't it? So
Yep.
shall we pick that up now? So essentially, we just check the missing person section of the campaign log, and in order for any that weren't crossed off, as in only the ones that you played in the prologue, you read their paragraph. Yes. But obviously, for the purpose of this podcast, we'll read all 4, won't we? Yeah. Do you want to take the first one?
So Gavriel Misra. The entry hall to the manor is beautifully decorated, but you find it odd that the grand staircase's wooden balustrade has been recently repaired, and by the looks of it, hastily so. While nobody is looking, you follow the handrail up and down the stairs until you spot what you are looking for, several splinters of wood, perhaps dislodged by a bullet. You ascend the staircase once more and position yourself where one would need to be standing in order to fire such a shot. After a moment of observation, a faint glimmer near one of the decorative ferns on the second floor catches your eye. There you find proof, a bullet casing from a .45 handgun. A gun was indeed fired in the entry hall of the manor, but if that is true, how did nobody hear the shots? And then under missing persons, next to Gavriel Misra's profile, record that the investigators are on Gavriela's trail.
I'm just thinking it through now, because that's described basically the aftermath of Gavriela's scene, doesn't it? Because she was firing shots at the spectral watcher. So thinking about it, there were clues left behind at the end of the scenario, and basically the way this scenario starts is the more clues that were left behind, the less clues there are that we need to find. So I guess narratively, the better we do in the first scenario, the less there's for us to do on this scenario. because there was more clues left behind previously, there are less clues for us to find now to trigger this interlude, if that makes sense. So I'm starting to see how it fits together, but it still feels clunky and unintuitive.
And we weren't there before, so it's to do with. Oh, it's
yes.
You know, when if you think too hard about it, it just doesn't.
Yeah, the more evidence that was left behind, as in marks on the banister and whatever, it's easier for us today to work out what happened, because there's only maybe 1 or 2 clues to discover to clear that location. Right. So I think that's what they were aiming for. Right. The more evidence that was left, the less clues we need to find now at the party.
I see. Okay.
You don't look
well,
convinced.
No, I understand your logic. It makes complete sense, but it's you really.
But it's still unintuitive,
right.
Isn't it? Yeah,
that's right.
Right, I'll take the next one anyway. So it's Jerome David. So if he's not crossed off and there's no clues on the office, then we read this. Joseph Miger's personal office is pretty tidy for someone whose personal secretary just went missing. Perhaps he's just a fastidious person, or perhaps he's been scrubbing evidence of some wrongdoing. You find nothing of note in any of Joseph's files, but after some perusing you realise there is one place you haven't checked: the trash. Rooting through the garbage bin yields fruit. Near the bottom is a small pocket journal belonging to Jerome Davids, probably tossed there carelessly by the cleaning staff. You turn to the last page. There Jerome had recorded a list of names, perhaps transcribed from Joseph's records. You don't know what it means yet, but it must be important. Mm-hmm. Under missing persons, next to his profile, record that we're on Jerome's trail.
Then we have Penny White. So this is the balcony. The balcony outside Joseph Miger's bedroom overlooks the rainy streets and sombre spires of French Hill. According to eyewitnesses, Penny was last seen entering Joseph's bedroom, presumably to tidy it up, or perhaps to look for one of his personal belongings. The cigarette butt on the floor of the balcony tells a different story. Penny came here for a break, and judging from how busy the rest of the staff is, it was probably a much-needed one. If she had been in any danger, she would have climbed or jumped down from the balcony. You peer over the edge. It's possible, but unlikely. A fall from here would break a leg or worse. She likely would have retreated back into the manor, where she would have called for help, only nobody saw her exit from the bedroom. Something doesn't add up. You tuck the cigarette butt into your coat pocket, hoping it's actually a lead and not a wild goose chase. And so that's with we're on Penny's trail.
If Valentino Rivas's profile is not crossed off and there's no clues on the billiard room, then we read this. Tracing Valentino's steps isn't difficult. As the guest of honour and life of the party, from what you hear, there's always a crowd around him. This makes the story that he vanished when they weren't looking all the more unbelievable. In the billiards room where Valentino was last seen, you corner Adam Gensler, the man he was playing billiards with just before his disappearance. Look, I already told the cops and the reporters what I saw, he explained, fidgeting and tapping his toes repeatedly. Tino and I were playing billiards. I looked away. Next thing I know, he's gone. He insists, angrily returning to his billiards game. Now, where is that damned one ball, he mutters. It might be nothing, but it looks like Valentino wasn't the only thing to go missing that night. Under missing persons, record that we're on Valentino's trail. And then we progress to Act 1B.
What does that last sentence mean? Do you know? It might be nothing, but it looks like Valentino wasn't the only thing to go missing that night. Do they mean the one ball?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Did he didn't use it as a weapon, did he? Or try to?
He used something as a weapon, I know that, but I'm not sure. So that then triggers 1B, doesn't it? Which is death approaches. Before you can investigate further, the building is suddenly plunged into icy darkness and all of the lights flicker once and are snuffed out. A thick, otherworldly mist begins to seep into the corridors, causing everything it touches to decay. This is what I mean. The acts and acting like an agenda, and the agenda's acting like an act at the moment.
Yeah.
Move each investigator and each enemy currently at the entry hall to the Victorian halls. For each location in play, find the set-aside spectral version and swap them. So everything gets swapped like it was in the Prelude. If there's an investigator at that location, reveal it. In player order, each investigator spawns one of the set-aside monster enemies at his or her location until each of the set-aside monster enemies has been spawned. Spawn the set-aside Spectral Watcher enemy in the entry hall. Shuffle the remainder of the set-aside the Watcher encounter set and the set-aside Realm of Death encounter set into the encounter deck along with the encounter discard pile. So we're essentially back to where we were in the Prelude. Yeah.
Just looking back at the prologue scenario, Valentino was pocketing the Womble at the exact moment that he disappeared. So I'm guessing it disappeared out with him. Yeah, he says the room falls silent as you block out the clamour of the music, focusing all your attention on the Womble and the corner pocket. Okay. You hold your breath and strike the cue ball. It clacks, it hits the target, drops effortlessly into the pocket. There you see, and then you realise everyone else is gone. So it looks like him and the Womble got teleported to the spectral realm. Right. Nothing more significant than that.
So we have a new act and agenda now.
Yeah. We do. Yes. Shall I read Act 2A then, the spectral realm? In the blink of an eye, everything has changed. A sudden oppressive silence fills the halls of Joseph Miger's manor. Gone is the din of idle chatter from the banquet hall, the clinking of glasses, the laughter of oblivious guests. Save for only you and several others, all of the people in the house have vanished without a trace. All that is left is the dark mist and the beings that inhabit it. 4 clues per investigator to be found. And obviously all the clues that we'd found at this point have all been stripped off us, so we've got to start again. Picking up clues from the spectral locations.
Yes, exactly. And Agenda 2A, Over the Threshold. Does this have something to do with the 4 missing persons? And if so, what does that mean for your survival? Each Silver Twilight enemy gains victory 0 and counts as an investigator for the purpose of determining where hunter enemies move during the enemy phase. Forced, after the hunter enemies move, step of the enemy phase, each ready spectral enemy deals its damage value to each humanoid enemy at its location. So in other words, Silver Twilight enemies get damaged. It doesn't explain why that's a problem, but I suppose you're supposed to ascertain that it's not a good idea, but it doesn't really explain why. And there is 11. It's the last agenda, and it has 11 on it. So basically, you've got 11 turns in the spectral realm to get these clues for some reason.
Does this mean, because Joseph Miger is a Silver Twilight enemy, and he's got Victory 2 printed on his card, but does that mean he isn't Victory 2? He's actually Victory 0? Because it says each Silver Twilight enemy gains a Victory 0. Maybe that's in the FAQ.
Yeah, I would assume he's Victory 0, Victory 2 or something. So he's still Victory 2. I think it's just assigning Victory 0 to the other.
That don't have a victory.
Yeah, just so they end up in the victory display and not the discard pile.
Yeah. I guess as well we should talk about Joseph Miger because he could potentially be in play at this point if we had the 3 clues per investigator as the agenda advanced. So he's 3 fight, 3 health, 3 evade. He's humanoid, cultist, Silver Twilight, and elite, and he has retaliate. But there is an action. If no other Silver Twilight enemy has Doom on it, we can parlay with him. Test Book of 4 to convince Joseph that this is not your doing. If you fail, he attacks you, but if you succeed, we flip the card over and read its text. Yes. And the flavour text is, do not rouse the beast you do not comprehend.
So yes, he's sitting as far so the spectral watcher's at the entrance, and at the moment I don't think we can leave. It's fogged over. Joseph is as far away from us as possible. So he's probably going to be something like on the balcony in the office he's going to be further away. There's going to be some other Silver Twilight people hanging around. We've got Victory 0, and they can be hunted by spectral enemies. So there's a lot going on in a relatively small space.
Yeah, and some of those Silver Twilight enemies that start spawning will get Doom on them, won't they? And so we need to deal with that as well before we can parlay with Joseph Miger.
Yeah, or they get killed by, as well.
Yes, by the spectres, yes.
But what's not clear is why, like, you've got to get the clues, but also what's the benefit of parlaying with Joseph Miger? He's just sitting, chilling somewhere.
Seems to be a common theme in this scenario that we don't really know what's going on, and we don't know why we're doing things.
Yes, exactly. All we know, we've got to get some clues.
Yeah, we've got to get some clues, and in the meanwhile, Joseph Miger is skulking around as well and has a parlay action on him, the benefit of which we do not know yet. But basically, we've got to talk to him.
He's not moving. Is just going to sit wherever he is.
Yes.
So one of the things, if you know this scenario, you're not going to want Silver Twilight people to get killed. If you don't know this scenario, then why would you care? You'll just focus on the clues.
Yeah. Yes. Let them die and get out. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, the agenda's not going to not going to be the first thing to flip, unless you're unlucky. You probably get your 4 clues per investigator, and you may have spoken to Joseph Miger before then as well, because he's got some extra text on him.
Joseph lowers his weapon and studies you for a moment. Perhaps you are telling the truth, but if that's true, he ponders the situation, then holsters his weapon and checks his pocket watch. Regardless, we have little time. If my estimate is correct, the anomaly will recede soon. We must be out of the manor before that occurs, or we'll all be trapped here. You ask how he knows all of this, but he merely shakes his head. This is not the time. Ask again if we make it out of here alive. We move all Doom from this card, and for the remainder of the game, Doom cannot be placed on Silver Twilight enemies, and Joseph Miger gains aloof. Flip this card back to its enemy side and disengage it from all investigators. So
he's a buddy.
Yeah, and that's giving us a clue then, isn't it, that we don't want people to be left here in the spectral realm.
Exactly.
Which we didn't know at that point. I mean, I guess it's common sense that we don't want to leave people stuck
in.
But
yeah,
we don't know who's on our side at the moment.
So if we then flip back 2A, so we get our clues, and I'm assuming most of the time you'll do that before agenda 2A flips.
Yeah.
You find the corpse of one of the others trapped here, a member of the Silver Twilight Lodge. You surmise, although his outfit of blue and silver robes suggests something more esoteric. Gripped tightly in his withered hands is a small tome bearing the insignia of the lodge. Browsing through its pages, you are surprised to find all manner of information regarding the mist and the creatures you have encountered, including a spell to, quote, release the bonds of death and escape the mist. How long has this man been here studying this realm? Regardless, at least, you have a way out. The mist blocking your escape recedes. Reveal the entry hall. Shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck. So we've got a way out now.
Yeah, so I guess that's the one bit that we didn't see in the prologue scenario, because the entry hall said that it was blocked and you cannot enter it. So now it flips and it has 3 clues. Effectively, it's the same as the unspectral version, only it's still classed as spectral. But it has the resign option. You tear through the front doors of the manor, escaping the spectral realm and leaving the remainder of the survivors to their fate. The dark mist begins to recede, and the entry hall to Joseph's manor is slowly restored to its original state as the mist dissipates. So, yes, that's now giving us an objective, isn't it?
So then we have Act 3A, really, to do against the agenda.
Shall I take that? Now that the mist has receded, you might be able to escape with your lives, but what about Joseph Miger and the other lodge members left behind? Should you stay to make sure they escape, or flee while you have the chance? So forced, at the end of the round, each Silver Twilight enemy in the entry hall escapes. Put them beneath the entry hall out of play. Move each ready Silver Twilight enemy with the aloof keyword once toward the entry hall. So I guess that's important as to why Joseph Miger gains aloof as part of talking to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be moving and he would stay stuck there, wouldn't he? And then the objective is, if each undefeated investigator has resigned, advance.
So in Act 3A, basically you've got to try and usher as many Silver Twilight people left out the door as possible.
Yes. Unfortunately, when we played, we never spawned Joseph Miger, so we weren't really any the wiser as to not leaving anyone behind, and we were thinking, it doesn't matter, does it? Let's just let the ghost kill them and we'll leg it.
Exactly. That's exactly what we thought, yes.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to, do you get all that done in time, or does the agenda flip? If we do escape the cage, we get alive for now. Coming to this place was a terrible mistake. You had hoped to uncover evidence pertaining to the disappearance at the estate, not to become victims yourself. As you tear through the entry hall and slam through the manor's heavy fronted doors, you vow to put as much distance between you and the Migra estate as you possibly can. Unfortunately, your plan is quickly derailed. ... R1.
Whereas if you fail to escape, and the agenda, the agenda 2 advances, we get escape if you can. The mist continues to seep through the walls and the foundation of the building, filling the manor's halls. Inside the mist, you cannot unsee the screaming faces, the twisting torment of the spirits trapped within. Their agony ripples throughout the corridors and pierces your mind. A bout of madness overtakes you. You must escape before you too are lost forever. Before you know it, you are running for the exit. So if we are at Act 2, we are trapped inside the spectral realm, R3. If we are in Act 3, we barely escape with our lives. Each investigator who has not resigned is defeated and suffers 1 physical trauma. So yes, so the difference there is whether the entry hall was revealed or not, isn't it? So if it was revealed, we are able to just get out by the skin of our teeth. If not, we are trapped there.
That's right. So there are 3 resolutions. No resolution or investigators resigned or defeated. It depends on which act you're in, which one you get. Weirdly, there is one for Act 1. So if there's no and the only way I could think this would work is if you resign in Act 1.
That's true. Yeah.
I couldn't think of another way.
Because you can't get to Act 2 without advancing the agenda.
Yeah. Because as soon as you advance the agenda, then it's the spectral realm, isn't it? And it's closed
Unless
off.
Unless you got defeated in those first 8 rounds, perhaps.
But there's no monsters. And
that's true,
the Silver Twilight enemies are aloof. So you'd have to work pretty hard to die.
Yes, good point. Yes.
So I think they had to put it in because, yes, you could literally go, I'm not going to get these. You might go, I'm not going to get the 3 hack clues in time. I'm going to resign.
Or maybe you're one of those investigators with weaknesses that are enemies, so they could fight you, and you could be particularly unlucky and get defeated by your own weaknesses. Maybe some real edge case. But like you say, I think they're just covering themselves, aren't they? So that every possible permutation is covered.
Yes. If you resign defeated and it's Act 2, you go to Resolution 3, which is the same as if you kind of get to the end. So that same resolution. You know what I mean? If you flip the agenda at the end, it's the same thing. If no resolution was reached and each investigator resigned or defeated and it was Act 3, then you go to Resolution 1. So it's a kind of a strange kind of resolution outcome. So it does depend very much on which act you end up kind of moving through on.
So I think for comedy purposes, we do Resolution 2 first, as in we just resigned at the beginning. We didn't do very well. We never even advanced the first agenda. So that is, you head out of the manor and you are embraced by the brisk evening air. Your investigation has left you exhausted and strangely paranoid. Something about that event felt peculiar to you, though you're not sure why. Although the guests seemed oblivious, you noticed that the staff was sweaty and jittery, and lodge members seemed tense as well. More than once you noticed their gaze drawn to you, watching your every move. If you didn't know any better, you'd think the Silver Twilight Lodge was having you tailed for some reason. Regardless, you weren't able to find much information about the 4 disappearances, and you doubt you ever will. Perhaps it was nothing after all. In your campaign log recalled, the investigators learned nothing of the lodge's schemes. We get our victory X and we skip the interlude and go straight to scenario 3.
If you get resolution 1, which is basically you get to the end, you get to Act 3 and you get out, or you're defeated, or some combination of the two, then you get, as soon as you emerge onto the patio, you are surrounded by grim men in trench coats. Several of them reach into their coat pockets, a warning not to do anything too hasty. Before any threats can be fulfilled, the silence is broken by an icy voice. "Now, gentlemen, there is no need for that." The men withdraw to reveal an elderly man you recognize as Carl Sanford, the president of the Silver Twilight Lodge. Despite the dangerous situation, his expression is almost too casual. The complete lack of fear in his posture and his actions suggests a confidence backed by substantial power. His bodyguards take several steps back, allowing you to speak with Mr. Sanford in private. In your campaign log, record that investigators escape the spectral realm. X points, and you go to interlude 2, the price of progress.
And then the remaining one is resolution 3, which is basically you don't manage to escape. So that resolution 3 is if it was Act 2 when you were defeated, you couldn't resign in Act 2. But it's giving you that option if each investigator resigned or was defeated. I suppose if you've got a "I'm out of here" card, perhaps.
Maybe, yeah. So it's either that happens to you, or you stick it out to the end and no resolution.
Yeah. So resolution 3, you flee toward the manor's entry hall, but the wall of spectral mist still blocks your way. Emerging from the mist are several ghostly faces and arms, writhing and screaming in torment. You turn and are confronted by the empty visage of the hooded watcher. Before you even realize your doom, the creature's ethereal body is swirling and swooping through the air as though composed of mist itself. The creature reconstitutes before you, and its charred hand grips your throat, holding you aloft with tremendous strength. You kick and dig your nails into the creature's hand, struggling with the ferocity of a cornered animal, but it is no use. The last thing you see is the red glare of the thing's eyes as it drills into your mind. In your campaign log, record the investigators are never seen or heard from again. Each investigator who resigned earned experience equal to the victory X, but again I'm not sure how you could, and each investigator who has not resigned is killed. If there are not enough investigators in the pool of available investigators to continue the campaign is over when you lose. Each player whose investigator has been killed must choose a new investigator from the pool of available investigators.
Wow.
Skip interlude 2 and proceed directly to scenario 3. So the only way to go through the interlude is to successfully escape the party through the entry hall.
Yes.
In Act 3.
So could be quite brutal in sometimes.
So shall we pick up the interlude then, on the assumption that we managed to escape?
Yeah, because this is where things get interesting from a story perspective, because there's quite a few branching options here. So if at least one of the investigators has the Silver Twilight trait, like Preston, proceed to the price of progress 1, otherwise price of progress 2. So price of progress 1. It's you. I didn't expect you to be here, though perhaps I should have, Mr. Sanford says with a hint of surprise in his voice. I regret that you had to be involved in this unfortunate affair. I did not plan for you to be part of any of this. You narrow your eyes. You suspect fortune had nothing to do with it. You ask him what will happen to those still trapped inside. Human progress requires sacrifice, he recites so stoically. It is lamentable when that sacrifice is in blood, but the price in lamentation does not outweigh the yield for our labour.
Whereas if we didn't have the Silver Twilight trait, we would read 2, which is, I regret that we must meet under such unfortunate circumstances, Mr. Sanford says offhandedly. You narrow your eyes. You suspect fortune had nothing to do with it. You ask him what will happen to those still trapped inside. Human progress requires sacrifice, he recites stoically. It is lamentable when that sacrifice is in blood, so same as before. The price of lamentation does not outweigh the yield of our labour. So in both cases, we now move on to 3.
Yes. And 3 says, you didn't come here to listen to Mr. Sanford proselytizing about sacrifice. You came here for answers. You demand an explanation, but the elderly man cuts you off with a scowl. Yes, you speak of the incident last week. That was the creature's first manifestation and the arrival of the dark mist which you encountered inside. He glances at the front door to the manor and clears his throat. The lodge was not involved in the disappearances that occurred that night, he explains after a short pause. But we couldn't exactly go to the police and tell them a creature made of mist kidnapped 4 people in Mr. Miger's household, now could we? So we had to take matters into our own hands. We suspected that the creature was drawn to the crowd, so we recreated the incident in order to understand what happened, to discern its motives. The decision to host another event at Mr. Miger's estate so soon after the disappearances makes sense to you now. As much as you hate to admit it, there's some logic to the plan the lodge put into action, although you don't particularly like being used as bait. Who knows how many innocent bystanders were put into mortal danger? Even if the goal was noble, was it worth the sacrifice? I hope you understand that our organisation only seeks the betterment of humankind. There are harsh truths that lie beyond our 5 senses, Mr. Sanford says, his expression grim. If we are to survive and prosper, we must adapt, we must learn, we must understand. That is what our order seeks to achieve, a greater understanding of the world around us, a worthy pursuit. Don't you agree? So basically, it happened. They didn't know why it happened, so they're like, oh, let's set it all up again. And this time try and understand what's going on, basically. So the whole thing was an experiment in understanding.
Yeah. So then it's decision time again, isn't it? Well, not decision, condition time again. So there's basically 4 different outcomes here, or well, 3 really. So if Josef Miger, first of all, we check where Josef Miger is. If he's in the victory display, we go to progress 4. If he's in the entry hall,
that means
we kill him.
If it's in the victory display, we've killed him, basically.
Yes, yeah. If he's in the entry hall, we go to 5.
So he survived.
If neither of those is true, so he's still stuck inside, then if there are more Silver Twilight enemies in the victory display than the entry hall, we go to 4. So that basically means we beat up more Silver Twilights, or more Silver Twilight people died than escaped.
Died. Yep.
Whereas the other way round, if there are more, in that instance we go to progress 4. But if there are more in the entry hall than in the victory display, so as in more escaped than died, then we go to 6. So that 4, 5, and 6 is sort of like from worst to best, I guess, isn't it?
Yes.
So 4 is we either killed Josef Miger. Either Josef Miger's dead. It's not necessarily us that killed him, is it? It could be the ghost.
That's right. Could be the ghost.
So either he's dead or there are more Silver Twilight people dead than escaped. We go to 4. Yep. If more escaped than... Well, if Josef Miger escaped, we go to 5. Whereas if more escaped than were killed, we go to 6. Okay, so I'll pick up 4 then. So this is like the worst case where either Josef Miger is dead or a whole load of Silver Twilight people are dead.
That happened to us.
Because we kind of forgot the importance of getting them out, didn't we? Because it was so long since we played it last time.
Correct.
Before you can reply, one of Sanford's men emerges from the house behind you. He sheathes a long silver blade as he addresses Mr. Sanford. There's no sign of Joseph inside, sir. The man eyes you suspiciously, keeping his hand on the hilt of his sword. His posture reminds you of that of a knight, stoic and rigidly disciplined. I see, Sanford replies. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath before continuing. A great loss for our order, but one we anticipated. Gather the lodger's belongings from inside the estate, and I will deal with the consequences. The knight nods and heads back inside. Carl's cold blue eyes turn back to you. As for you, I would ask you leave this place at once. You've done enough harm as it is. Before you can protest, he commands the other men nearby to escort you off the premises. Then you have little choice but to comply. In your log, we record that Joseph disappeared into the mist, and we record that we are enemies of the lodge. Proceed to scenario 3.
If we get 5, which is Josef Miger got out, you consider Mr. Sanford's words carefully. You believe that he's telling the truth, but you're not sure if the ends justify his means. Before you can reply, Joseph steps forward. I believe our new comrades understand the value of working together, he says politely, standing at your side. They could have escaped on their own, but they stayed behind to make sure members of the lodge were safe. Surely we are of the same mind. Courage is not the same as sacrifice, Joseph, Carl Sanford intones patiently. Do they have the will to do what is truly right for all humanity? The elderly man turns his attention back to you, his cold eyes glinting in the moonlight. He approaches calmly, extending his hand. Regardless, you have experienced firsthand the danger that we all face. Join us, and we can face it together. With our knowledge combined, we can protect Arkham from this threat. In your campaign log, record that the investigators rescued Joseph. Each investigator gets 2 bonus experience as they gain insights of the inner working of the Silver Twilight Lodge. And then we have to decide. There's 3 decisions here. We refuse to be part of it. No. Progress. We go to price of progress 7. We agree. Price of progress 8. Or we agree, but we're lying. Progress 9. Like that option. Yeah. So we're either nah, yeah, nah.
So before we make that decision, let's just go to price of progress 6, because that ends with a similar position. So
yes.
That's if more Silver Twilight people escaped than were killed.
Yes.
You consider Mr. Sanford's word carefully. You believe he's telling the truth, but you're not sure if the ends justify his means. It sounds very similar. Before you can reply, Joseph Margot emerges from the house behind you, flanked by 2 guards wearing expensive suits. One wields a long silver blade as he stands guard. The other observes the situation vigilantly, keeping one hand on the grip of a revolver holstered at his side. Joseph recognizes you and addresses you curtly. You've been poking your head where you don't belong, he threatens, narrowing his dark eyes. Stay your tongue, Joseph, Sanford interjects. He approaches calmly, extending his hand towards you. You have experienced firsthand the danger that we all face. Join us, and we can face it together. With our knowledge combined, we can protect Arkham from this threat. So it's a very similar outcome.
Except Joseph doesn't like us.
Yes.
He doesn't like us in this, because we left him, right? We didn't.
Yeah, he was still in the house, yes.
That's right.
So again, we have the same decision.
Yes.
Refuse to be part of this, agree, or agree but are lying. For 7, 8, and 9, respectively.
So if we refuse to be part of it, then nah. Mr. Sanford scowls, returning his hand to his side and narrowing his gaze. I see. I cannot say I'm not disappointed. I thought you would be insightful enough to see the value in working together, but I realized that my confidence was misplaced. He sighs and gazes past you towards Joseph's manor. Very well, the lodge will handle this problem on our own. Return to your state of ignorance, but I warn you, do not get in our way. I am not an enemy you want to have. Before you can protest, Sanford commands the other men nearby to escort you off the premises, and you have little choice but to comply. Record that the investigators are enemies of the lodge, and then proceed to the secret name.
And then 8 is if we agree. You shake Mr. Sanford's hand. His grip is cold but strong. The other members of the lodge seem to relax around you. We will do great works together, my friends, says Sanford. Great works indeed. In your campaign log, record that we are members of the lodge, and we add a cultist token to the chaos bag. Go to scenario 3.
And 9 is we say yes, but we're lying. You shake Mr. Sanford's hand. His grip is cold but strong. The other members of the lodge seem to relax around you. We will do great works together, my friend, says Sanford. Great works indeed. But out of the corner of your eye, you see one of the lodge's enforcers gripping his weapon a little tighter. So clearly we haven't been that good at lying. Yes. And in that one, we record investigators a member of the lodge again, and we add the token, and we record that investigators are deceiving the lodge. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. There you go. Just sketching a little flow chart as we worked our way through that. We've heard up for that next time.
So some nice little branching options there. We can either be wholeheartedly in with the lodge, sort of in with the lodge, or we can be completely kind of antithetical to the lodge, or kind of just bumbled. We're so bumbling that we're not part of anything with the lodge. So there's sort of different options there. And then there's this thing that if you were being hunted.
Yes.
There's a thing, isn't there?
So that was that in the very first scenario, wasn't it? Whereas if you happen to look at the back of the act, I think it was.
Yes,
it was a card you should never have been able to read, and then you just had to make a note that you were being hunted. So if you are being hunted, you are startled from your reverie by the sensation of something crawling up your chest, an icy hand that clasps around your throat. It grips until your breath is trapped and your windpipe starts to crack. Only there's nothing there, just a chilly draught entering the room through the open window. The wind, shrill, whistling wind, rattles your window frame, penetrating the safety of your home. It almost sounds like the dissonant notes of a dreadful flute, mindless, haunting music that fills you with inexplicable terror. You rush to the window and slam it shut, hands trembling. Still, the thin, discordant notes echo around you. This can't be real, you think. Not here, not now. But denial provides no asylum. The cold creeps its way up your back once again. A thin grey mist pours into the room, seeping beneath your front door and through the cracks around your window. It crawls on the ground and slowly coils around your ankles, sending shivers up your body. You run into your bedroom, slam the door and lock it. A few seconds of respite are all you receive before the invader resumes its assault. Over and over a heavy force slams against the door, shaking the entire room. You press against the door, trying to hold it shut. With each pounding crash, dark mist seeps through the cracks appearing in the wood. With a final crash, the door shatters. You are hurled back, landing not on the floor, but in a cloud of mist, gripped by 100 spectral arms that cling into your flesh and tear you limb from limb. No, that can't be right. You're here, reading this very text. A wave of relief washes over you as you realise it's all in your head. Even so, the words compel your mind to torment you with visions of a macabre death. You find yourself glancing at your window, searching for dark mist that is not there. What if the text is trying to tell you something? Maybe... No, that's impossible. Real or imagined, your fate approaches all the same. A little bit of, almost like a bit of fourth wall breaking there, isn't it?
Yes, a bit of Carcosa. It's a bit of a Carcosa-y kind of thing.
No, that didn't happen. You're just there reading this.
Yes, exactly. So there we go. And again, we are left not really knowing what's going to happen next.
No, because there are so many outcomes to that scenario. We could be enemies of the lodge, we could be friends of the lodge, we could be friends of the lodge but are deceiving them.
Yes.
So we know they're up to something. We know they've had more involvement in these happenings than it originally appeared. But we still don't know why, what they're trying to achieve, how the witches play into all of this. There's just a lot we don't know at this stage.
Yeah, and it seems like they don't know either, because they didn't know why the Spectral Watcher was rocking up the first time. So this was literally an experiment to try and work out what was going on. But if they now do know, as a consequence, they're not really saying. Yeah, and not really sure what's going to happen in the next scenario. There's no kind of, Sanford said, come with us, we're off to fight the Spectral Watcher in the realm or something, or, you know, there's nothing. We're just left wondering what the next scenario might be again.
Yeah, and also, I suppose, thinking back to how this was originally released, that was the final scenario of the first box. So you wouldn't even be able to look forwards and see what was going to happen next. You'd have to wait for the first Mythos pack to be released, wouldn't you? You'd be on a right cliffhanger there, not really knowing where we're going to go. So there you go. What do you think to that?
So this scenario, it's quite a fun scenario to play, but I have a lot of problems with it, I have to say.
You don't say.
You've probably noticed. I think the first thing is that the fact that you played in the prelude sort of undercuts the fun in a sense, because you know about it. It would be a much more interesting scenario if it was the first scenario, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like you didn't know that things were going to become the spectral realm, but that's all been kind of revealed. And it's weird because the player knows that, but your characters don't. You know what I mean? You're in this place where you know more than your characters you're playing do, because they've not been there before. No. So that for me isn't great. And there's just the stuff at the beginning, which is kind of, you know, we talked about, which is hard to get your head around. But the thing it's the thing I really don't like is that it hides from you what you're supposed to be doing. Like, it doesn't say in the beginning that you're really there as amateur sleuth to really uncover what went on. It doesn't say that, but it sort of only just says it in the act. And it's then clear that's what you're supposed to be doing. So there's this dissonance between, you kind of got to work that out. And the other thing is is that the whole thing about saving the Silver Twilight people, you don't know that till almost the end of the scenario. And we found that a whole lot of people got killed, and we didn't know we were supposed to save them. And I wonder whether it would have been a better scenario if instead at the beginning just sort of saying, oh, just, find as many clues. Why couldn't Joseph Marga be in there at the beginning? And something like the act is 3 hat clues and go and parley with Joseph Marga at the very beginning and do it that way. And then he's like, spectral realm, we've got to get out of here, that kind of thing. It would have made it much clearer about what you were supposed to do. So the whole thing was sort of, unless you know the scenario, you kind of don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And it's not clear to the player or the characters sort of what they're supposed to do. You have to kind of work it out. There's this real disconnect between what the scenario wants you to be doing and what you kind of have to kind of work out you're supposed to be doing. It's really strange.
Yeah. I mean, I guess playing devil's advocate, it is a sort of a horror stroke mystery themed game where in most cases you will be thrust into a situation where you don't know what you're supposed to be doing and you've got to sort of fumble your way through. But from a narrative point of view, I agree, it doesn't really gel, does it? You don't know why you do what you're doing and why, and the way it unfolds is a little, I can't think what the right word is. Disappointing is not the right word, but dissatisfying, I think that's probably the word I'm thinking of. Yeah.
I mean, it is true that there's mystery there, and not having agency is a good sort of horror trope. And that's true. But I think for me, the problem is that there's very significant narrative aspects that are just cut off to you.
Yes.
If you don't get the 3 hat clues, if you don't know, and you don't know till later that you're supposed to be saving Silver Twilight enemies, it doesn't kind of allow you to make those decisions because you don't know. You know what I mean? And
I guess being in the dark and not knowing might work well in a film or a TV show.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a game. You are actually in control of what your person is doing, so you need to have some sort of direction as to what you're trying to achieve, rather than trying to intuit it from what is around you.
And I mean, the thing is, it can still have those elements. So, for example, if the first act had been get 3 hat clues, right? You get the 3 hat clues, you flip it. Joseph Marga confronts you in wherever you are. Why are you here? What are you doing? Why are you snooping around? Parley. Yeah. If you fail to parley, you're in a fight. If you succeed, then you flip and you get the story. And you know what I mean? Like that to me would have kind of felt a bit more focused and kind of, okay. And if they'd said at the beginning, we're going to this party, we're going to work out what the hell happened, we're going to snoop around, we're going to surreptitiously do that. If you get the 3 hat clues, and that's what you got to do to get through the first act, you draw attention to yourself, and Joseph Marga then wants to know why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? And either you make enemies of the Silver Twilight through that, or you manage to parley with him and convince him that, you know what I mean? It's something like that. I think would have made for a better scenario than the way it's sort of constructed.
Maybe it was an experiment. They were trying different methods of storytelling rather than,
I think so.
Rather than being almost like stepping back to how things were in Dunwich. Oh, right, now you're going to the museum to find out what's going on. And they're just trying something different, perhaps.
Yes.
But I think you're right. It wasn't as successful.
Yes, yeah. I think it's this balance between giving the players enough agency that they kind of feel like they've got focus, and the player has got that, but not too much agency that it feels like, okay, I just got to do X, Y, and Z and tick a few boxes. It is a bit of a balancing act between the two. I agree.
I guess as well, it's a little bit like the later scenarios that are more open world, where you don't know what you're looking for, but you can go where you like, and so it's like that in a scenario format. Right, you've got this house, you don't know what you're doing here, you don't know what you're looking for, off you go.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it's also true that once you've played this scenario, like if you and I played it again, we'd know, right, we've got to get the 3 hat clues. Okay, we've got to go and speak to Joseph. You know what I mean? We'd be like, we've got to do this, then.
Yeah, yes, because the way it's written, just find them as much as you can. Okay, well, we got 8. That's plenty. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But for me, I didn't mind playing it. It's a pretty nice scenario to play. But yeah, not one of my more favourite ones.
I liked the mechanic towards the end, the fact that the Silver Twilight Lodgers were of their own accord making their way to the exit as well, and you were trying to help them escape or not hinder them, or just adding that extra. That was something we've not really seen before as well, isn't it? With rather than being, I think the only agency we've sort of seen on the enemy's side is them coming after us to attack us, not trying to do something else, escape the building the same way we were. I quite like the addition of that mechanic if they were trying to get to the exit as well.
And I mean, it is intriguing what the path of being against the Twilight Lodges versus, being with them. Be interesting to see how that all plays out. So,
definitely.
Which I guess we'll find out next time, I suppose.
In fact, we find out very, very quickly, because just looking at the start of scenario 3, it asks, are you members of the lodge? Are you enemies of the lodge? What did you learn? And then that already affects the introduction to the very next scenario. So
interesting.
Yes, looking forward to see how that pans out.
Yes, that will be a lot of fun. So fantastic. So yeah, that was awesome. So thanks everyone for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll next time we'll be having a playthrough, and then a chat about the secret name and see what happens there.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm CrabbyTerror8.
I'm Kevling.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
So once more, thank you for listening. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. If you have any feedback for us, you can email us on ftextpodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram and Threads at ftextpodcast. So on behalf of CrabbyTerror8 and myself, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.